Yeah, that's right. Well, we're going to try to sort of touch on some of you will have been aware of the points of emphasis which have been put up on our Facebook page. However, we realise now that probably some of you, because you're new to the VJBL, may not have had access to the Facebook page. So we'll just sort of touch on and we'll talk through the various points of emphasis. This topic always becomes a bit contentious because every year, every competition in the world has these points of emphasis. And I'll guarantee you, ever since I've started refereeing, which was a number of years ago, we were bombarded with points of emphasis every year, the same thing. And I can remember when we first started, we used to pinch them from the NCAA, and then we pinched them from the NBA, and then we pinched them from FIBA and whatever. So they're nothing new, nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. However, they are just areas that we want to focus on for the particular season, if you like. It doesn't mean that you eliminate everything else. It just means it's an area that we think probably, based on what's happened previously over the last couple of seasons, that it may be an area that needs some sort of attention or a little bit more emphasis. And you'll find that the referee coaches will often refer back to our points of emphasis. And similarly, when you may be sitting around to do your pre-game, that you may mention, just may touch on again, hey, listen, remember we've got these particular things. And the most significant one is shooter protection. It's not rocket science. It's obviously that we want to protect the shooter in every occasion. So if we talk about, and there's mention within, even in the interpretation document and so on, about advantage, disadvantage, or having an effect on the play. Not so much advantage, disadvantage anymore, but it's whether it's having an effect on the play. Now, when you referee, right from the very beginning, when you started in juniors, beginners, you were making those sort of conscious decisions. Because if you were making every decision that every time someone made contact with somebody, you'd blow your whistle, and we wouldn't have a game. So consciously, you do make those sort of decisions. The higher the level of competition that you go up, the more you have to apply that principle in terms of what is having an effect on the play. Now that is relevant for around the floor, around the court, and rebounding and so on. However, when it's shooter protection or shooting, there's no relevance to that. You can't say, that it didn't have an effect, because any contact on the shooter will have some form of an effect. Now, it may put them off, it might help them go in, but it is still having an effect on the play. So that's why the strong emphasis is on shooter protection. So if a player is contacted illegally on a shot, then we are expecting you to make a call. Pretty black and white. It's not, as I said, it's not all overly complicated or rocket science. Similarly, we're saying for dribbler protection, what tends to happen is that players, there's a little bit more contact we allow to go when someone's bringing the ball up the floor. And again, we apply the principles, I guess, of whether it's having an effect on them or not. But I'll give you a very good example of a story that was told, not a story, a situation that happened to me many years ago, which then changed my whole attitude towards protecting the dribbler. A guy by the name of Phil Smythe was probably the best player in Australia at the time and one of the best point guards in the world, was playing for Canberra in the NBL. So we had a final and we went upstairs for the drinks after the game. And Phil was an incredibly, very, very talented ball handler. So he could bring the ball up the floor. He was so skillful at being able to bring the ball up the floor. As a consequence, defenders would then always try to put him offline, bump him, knock him, push him or whatever. But my philosophy was, because he wasn't being put to a disadvantage or he wasn't being affected in any way, my observations, I didn't make a call. So he'd keep on going down the floor and he'd get around his player and I'd let it go. To make it worse, he said to me, what happens when I come down the other end and I do the same to my offensive player? I said, well, I'll call a foul because that guy's going to lose the ball, or he's going to be put to a disadvantage, or he's going to have an effect. And I thought, shit, that doesn't sound all that fair, does it? You know, that part's not so bad. He said, no, Billy, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is this. Do you realise how buggered I am by the end of the game or in the last quarter because I've been using up so much energy to be able to just get past my player who's forever manhandling me? I go, oh, I didn't. He said, I am stuffed. I am absolutely stuffed by the end of the game. Do you really think that's fair? And I go, how do you answer that? How do you give a response to that? So he changed my whole philosophy about the principles of understanding effect, because I don't know. I'm thinking it wasn't having any effect on him, but underneath it all, it was massively affecting him. And so therefore, that changed my attitude in some ways as to how to deal with contact on the ball carrier. So if somebody's bumping them and knocking them and there is a minor effect that you think that is now starting to happen, then you have to nip it in the bud. And it's much better to call that earlier in the game than it is in the latter part of the game. Now, I'm sure you've all heard that ad nauseum about, particularly, I always used to love the referees coaches coming in and saying, if you'd called it tighter at the beginning of the game, it wouldn't have got out of control. Yeah, great. That's great to be able to say that after the game. But at the time, during the game, that's not happening. So I'll guarantee you, the first quarter, most times the game pretty much flows pretty easily up the floor, yeah? Second quarter maybe starts to... And then what we have to understand is that players tire, similar to us, but players tire. When they start to tire, what tends to happen, the skill level drops. Now, in junior basketball, it's exactly the same. The skill level drops. What we have to do is identify that. Identify and say, hey, say to your partner, hey, listen, I reckon things are starting to deteriorate a little bit here. What we were letting go earlier, we now may have to call. Does that make sense? Because it's now starting to have a bigger effect. So therefore, we have to be able to understand and read the game and appreciate what is going on. Now, when you're coming in for first year in VJBL, it's very hard for you to make that adjustment to what has an effect and what doesn't have an effect. So the areas that we're wanting you to look at is obviously shooter protection and the dribbler protection. So if somebody, and if without a shadow of a doubt, if the dribbler loses control of the ball or stumbles or falls or whatever, and this contact has been applied by the defensive player illegally, then you have to reward that and you have to give it back to the offensive player. The other area is, unfortunately, something that's really becoming more and more prevalent in probably all sports, but in basketball in particular, is the faking and the flopping. It used to be called flopping. Now the wording has changed from FIBA to be called faking. The reason is to cover all aspects of the concept of faking, so it can be offensive or defensive faking. The principles we want to apply is, if you believe, and you strongly believe, that a player has faked the contact or has faked being hit or whatever and fall, then the option for you is to give a warning, right? It's not compulsory. However, it is pretty much advisable to give a warning. So if you can read between the lines, I'm saying pretty much give a warning, right? That way you cover yourself a little bit if you give a warning. Now the process to give the warning is when the flop occurs, you give a signal to indicate such, right, that something has happened here. At the next break in the play, you then will stop the game when there's a whistle, go across to the coach and just say number 14 or whatever has been given a warning for faking, right? So that at least we're informing and communicating, particularly in VJPL, the parents are the ones that are all wanted, so it's really worthwhile. And I suggest this: don't go racing up to the coach and be this close to them and just say, because that's a conversation between the two of us. do it from about 5 metres away from, so hey coach, number 14 for faking. That informs other people, yeah, and helps you, hopefully, for them to understand. Because if the next time that it occurs from any player from that same team, if that occurs again, it is an automatic technical foul. In Rio, the American coach religiously knew every referee's name, knew what country they came from, and what game they had done before. So he goes up before the game and he goes, "G'day, John," or whatever. "Oh, I saw you do the game yesterday against, so and so and so and so." He said, "Oh, what's it like in Russia?" And da da da. And he had a conversation with him. And he consciously would get his manager, the team manager, to go and find out all the details about a referee. It was just, that blew me away. I couldn't believe it. And that's why he had a great rapport with the coaches. It's understandable for us. The next thing we do, what happens when we feel uncomfortable? What do we do if someone's challenging us all the time for every call? What do we do when we feel uncomfortable? We feel intimidated. The next stage is we go, what's our only alternative? It's giving technical foul, right? And that's what we generally fall back on. So the better referees are the ones who can avoid having to do that. And that may mean, hey, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Hey, or, yeah, I think you're right, coach. I reckon I probably did make a mistake. I'll guarantee you they'll go, well, don't do it anymore. Yeah, fine, I'm not out here to make mistakes. So, being honest is a massive way of turning that around. And I understand junior basketball, they are pains in the backside. Coaches and parents are absolute pains. And they all think that they're playing at the Olympics, and they all expect you to be officiating at that standard. All you can do is, and the response back is, listen, we're trying our best. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying our best. And that's, we can spend a whole session on conflict. I've got 5 minutes to go to the restaurant and travel. Oh, goodness. Okay, as you will be aware, we have put some footage up on the website and also on Facebook and whatever with regards to the travel rule and also with regards to the new rule with the unsportsmanlike rule. The travel rule basically is this, in a nutshell. It just means it's relevant only to a player who is on the move. So if I am stationary, the same travel rules still apply. The only difference is it is now for a player who is on the move. Now, the two occasions when you're going to be on the move is when you're on the dribble or when you receive a pass. So let's say we receive a pass. If I'm running and I receive a pass, with my right foot on the ground. I've received the ball, I have my right foot on the ground. Previously, that would then be my pivot foot, correct? Because that was on the ground. Now, they are saying that if you were to count, that is 0. 0, nothing. Now, next step is 1. That is now my pivot foot. The next step is 2, and I can pivot that way. Or if I'm going to make a layup, I can take off that foot. So it's the 1-2 count rhythm, right? So it's really still the same, except it is a 0, 1, 2. So when you're moving. My observations of junior basketball is that happens a hell of a lot. And what makes it easier for us is now we don't have to make a travel call. Because now they bloody shuffle their feet all over the shop and then you say, oh, that's the new rule. I didn't say that. Don't quote me on that one. However, It is pretty much the same off the dribble. So when a player gathers the ball off the dribble, usually when they have dribbling, they have 1 foot on the floor. Now previously that was our pivot foot, so now it's simply that 0. When you gather the ball off the dribble, 0, 1, 2. And then the principles still apply. Sounds really easy in principle, it's flaming difficult in practice. Because you see something and you go, oh no, this is a new rule now. Yeah. And by that stage you've gone up and down 3 times. So it is not something that's going to come naturally to you. For the younger people, it will probably be much easier for you to adapt to than it will be for us. If you understand the reasons why they've changed the rule, just very briefly. The reason is because they were finding that a lot of referees around the world weren't following exactly that rule, and because it is the NBA rule. It is the NBA's rule, so therefore they wanted to unify the rules, and so they want to say, okay, we'll try and make the rules as close as we possibly can. And the other reason is when a player made that move, a reverse spin move, when they get the ball like that, that's their pivot foot, they turn towards the back of the basket's behind them, they turn this way, and then they were putting that foot back down on the ground again. That in fact, in reality, was a travel. But now, because you're gathering the ball on the move, you can step that way and it's not a travel. So they wanted to allow the reverse spin move to be part of the play.
Receiving the ball in the air.
Receiving the ball in the air, we got some clarification on that because some people ask questions about that. If I catch the ball in the air, correct me now. If I've caught the ball in the air, the first foot that comes to the floor is 1. I was going to say 0. Is 1. Right? So if I've gathered the ball, I've caught the ball in the air, clearly in the air. I haven't got any foot on the floor. I've caught it in the air. I can't do that. But if I could catch the ball in the air, the first foot to come to the floor is 1. The next step is 2. Okay?
The old rule applies in receiving the ball.
Yeah, so it's very much exactly the same rule as the old rule. But if I catch the ball with I have 1 foot on the floor, then I'm allowed the extra one.
But in motion, don't split
in motion,
Don't split hairs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's such a good point. Such a good point. We've always said we have these principles in terms of if you have to sit there and watch something in replay 5 times to determine whether it's a travel or not, it's not a travel. Right? So that means if you want to split hairs, we don't want you to call in that as a travel. Does that make sense? So if it's really close and it's touched borderline, we're not calling it as a travel.
Where the rule will apply for the guy grabbing the ball in the air will be on rebounding situations, a really good example. Jumping for the ball, receiving the ball and lands on 1, then 2, the old rule applies. You know, if the ball's being thrown in the air in a massive contest for the ball and he's right up in the air, he's got to grab it, he's got to come back down to the floor, then it'll be just the 1-2. The guy that's on the break, on the move, it doesn't matter whether he's foot off the ground that much or that much, if he's on the move, his first foot to hit the floor, it's going to be 0.
Yeah, that's the best way to explain it. All right, and the next one is another fun one, is the unsportsmanlike foul. Contrary to what the travel rule was, they changed the travel rule to be the same as the NBA. The unsportsmanlike foul rule isn't the same as the NBA. So if you watch the NBA, they don't call the same way unsportsmanlike fouls as they do in FIBA terms. Now basically, there are, how many criteria? 4 criteria, now there's 5. But there was originally 4 criteria, and the only one of the additional criteria, the 5th one, is referring to unnecessary contact. Right? So if something is unnecessary, if your opinion as the referee, you think that was unnecessary contact in transition, so when the ball's changing from one position to the other, and there's unnecessary contact, then that can be classified as an unsportsmanlike foul.
What does unnecessary mean?
Now, that's the whole problem about is what is unnecessary. That then determines what your perception of unnecessary and what my perception of unnecessary is. But however, if you judge the first criteria, which is criteria 1, which states, help Tim, which states
No legitimate attempt.
no legitimate attempt to play the ball within the spirit and intent of the rules. Right, so no legitimate attempt to play the ball within the spirit and intent of the rules. In my opinion, if we'd apply that rule, it's exactly the same as C5. It's exactly the same.
C3.
C3, sorry. It's exactly the same as the introduction of a new one. You know, if we apply that same, so our coaching and our instructing is very much apply like it says the first one, C1, where there was contact that was not the unnecessary bit, but in terms of the intent of the contact was not in part of the rule. So if you think about the reasons why they've introduced it in basic terms. At the World Championships in Spain, whatever number of years ago, the last minute of the game was 2 points of difference. The last minute went for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Because every time the ball was passed in, they foul. So they go the line, come to that, foul. Go line, fine, foul. And everybody knew exactly what they were doing. They were intentionally fouling. They were, obviously trying to stop the clock. So now what they want to do, and they felt that was an ugly part of the game, and as a consequence, they now want to stop that. So in transition, so as soon as it's in transition, so it's when the ball is being turned over, if I lunge out from, irrespective of whether it's a favourable or an unfavourable position, but if I lunge and I haven't made a legitimate attempt to play the ball, that is unsportsmanlike foul. Sounds easy, very difficult. It's more difficult, I think, because teams aren't adjusting as well as what you would like them to. So we're under a lot of pressure because we're calling it as an unsportsmanlike foul, and they're still not understanding the principles behind it all.
How many new people in the room? Right. How many of you guys are in the referee development Facebook page? Not in it? How many people not in it? Okay. So the referee development Facebook page, once you guys get invites sent and accept and you end up in the group, you actually end up with a whole heap of information that you probably not haven't been exposed to before. There is a mountain of information there, and we will, for those guys that are currently in the group, we will start reposting stuff from last year for the new members, so you will see stuff pop up again. But what will happen is once we've got the list from today, from Monday I'll go through and do reconciliation. Those guys who need invites will be sent. Anyone not on Facebook? Okay. I mean, certainly a priority. If you don't want to be on Facebook, we can email you directly, that's fine. But you'll find on Facebook that we do a lot of things around what's your decision clips, rule questions. Joe's going to post the rosters there as well, which will be good. So you guys can just click on the game, see what games you're on. With the Facebook, we'd encourage you guys to do make comments, and we also encourage everyone to be respectful of other people's comments as well. And I don't expect everyone to post all the time. But one of the things that we are seeing is that we do put up a what's your decision clip. You don't know what the answer is, just like it. Right? Because then when I post the answer, you actually see the answer. Okay? And the other thing too, if someone posts something that you agree with, like it. You don't have to post again on top of that. If you agree with something, just like it. Okay? It's about actually trying to get some discussion happening, and I do encourage some of the senior guys to get on the Facebook challenge, some of the terminology and some of the thinking. That's why they get in there and bite a little bit. The development page is for referees to comment only. Referee coaches, you need to stay out. Okay, we have our referee coaches have their own Facebook page that will make comment. That will be firing up, and we'll talk about that after this meeting. But yeah, so we've got 3 different types of Facebook pages. Just be quick. We have 3. Which one is the referee development group? 2 is the referee coaches, and 3 is the referee advisor group. On top of that, also Country have their Facebook page.
Kaz. And then VBRA also have their website as well. So we throw back and forth on those 5 different platforms. Okay, just to keep you guys in the mix on some of the reports that you guys can complete. Something new, you guys now can complete reports on, and we'll talk to the referee coaches about this a little bit later. The referee, you guys will be able to report on the referee coaches. Okay, but also too, you're able to report on the TOD. You're able to report on me, you're able to report on Kaz, Joe, whoever you like. We are trying to have a transparent book, an open book for you guys to have a forum. And as much as I hear, and we all hear, we go around the traps and go, oh, this and you know, I'm not getting engaged because of this or this happened, da 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 da. Well, guess what? Now you got a voice. Okay, you only need to contact one of the TOD or Joe directly. She'll send you the link. Complete the job form. All job forms regarding referee coaches and TOD go to one person, Bill Mildenhall. He gets them. And then he decides what he's going to do with that. It doesn't mean because you make a complaint or you put something in that is going to stick. The job form is an opportunity to see trends. Okay, it's an opportunity for you guys about a particular referee coach or a TOD personnel person. If there's particular trends there, then Bill will look at that and then address it accordingly.
So they're encouraging you, if you give 2 technical fouls, to make a report. You will have the opportunity, if you don't make the report, to put in an email as to why you didn't feel like the report was necessary. Maybe stepped over the line, tech 1, something else later, tech 2. Feel like the 2 related and it wasn't an over-the-top behavioural issue, then you can just email me and say, I gave 2 texts, but they weren't related and I didn't feel like that coach needed to be reported because of that. BJBL would like to see more reports putting in on breach behaviour, but it doesn't have to be the formal report. So I just wanted to...
Yeah.